Welcome to the On a Mission Mojo podcast, where I have the pleasure of interviewing impact-driven founders, entrepreneurs, authors, and business experts who are actively working to create a positive difference in our world. I'm your host, Lori Young, a branding specialist, certified master marketer, and a passionate advocate for brands that possess heart, soul, and an unwavering commitment to drive change for humanity. It takes grit, a visionary mindset, and an abundance of mojo to navigate this journey. And the stories I share will undoubtedly ignite your passion. If you're seeking an infusion of inspiration, motivation, and valuable insights to amplify your impact, let's dive right in. Welcome to episode 31 of On a Mission Mojo podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about how you can use public speaking, whether that's virtual or in person, to grow your visibility and your business in 2024. And I have a great guest with us today, and I'm going to introduce her. It is Jenn Espinosa-Goswami. Is an ICF certified public speaking coach and founder of Weightless LLC. A former Toastmasters International officer and graduate of the Masters of Leadership program at Augsburg University, Jenn helps entrepreneurs speak more clearly, consistently, and confidently on stage or behind a microphone. A finalist for Coach of the Year from International Association of Women in 2022, Jenn is an international speaker who has presented to thousands of executives, leaders, managers, and entrepreneurs over the past decade. She has served on multiple nonprofit boards in her home state of Minnesota. Prior to starting her company, Jenn served as a certified fraud examiner for 16 years within Fortune 500 financial companies. Welcome, Jenn, to the show. I'm so happy to have you. This is a topic that's really near and dear to my heart because I can remember the days now. I mean, I run a branding and marketing agency now, but I used to have a coaching practice. And the way that I built my coaching practice was through public speaking. So I'm a huge proponent of this as a technique for gaining visibility. And so I'm just really excited to learn from you and to have listeners gain insight. So why don't we just start by maybe you sharing a little bit about your mission in the world?
Well, thank you for having me, Laura. I'm super excited to share more about my personal mojo and how I got to be doing the work that I'm doing in the world today. And thank you for providing that platform for me to share this journey with you. You mentioned that you started your coaching business through public speaking. I'm actually a little bit different than that. I started my company, Weightless, as a public speaking company, and I only entered coaching after people in my audiences wanted to learn how to implement what I was talking about.
Okay.
So when it comes to personal stories, I'm right there with you. My personal story was about health because I started as a health coach.
Okay.
So my personal story had to do with how do you lose 100 pounds in 1 year with no products, programs, or supplements. That was my mission at the time. And this was, again, over a decade ago.
Sure.
Initially, when I started sharing this story, I'm like, who cares? You know, it just felt very like me. And those are the most annoying speakers in the world, is the people who just talk about themselves all day long. So I never wanted to be that person.
Sure.
So some people might think that that's a mismatch, right? She doesn't like to talk about herself. She's an introvert. She's the youngest of 4 kids. But I had an experience in Toastmasters one day where I presented a 5 to 7 minute speech, which is typical in Toastmasters. And it was the first time I shared my personal story of growing up as a morbidly obese child and being fat shamed and bullied and just everyday life. I mean, it was a normal part of my life at the time. And it was the first time I shared my story of what that felt like. And within 5 minutes, I had my mentor within Toastmasters come up to me. Her name was Siobhan.
Okay.
And she said, Jenn, that was so powerful. I want to learn how to change my health for the better. She was struggling with some weight and things like that. And I said, okay, you know, my mind is ticking here. And I'm like, okay, that means that just a 5 to 7 minute speech can make someone want to completely change their life and transform. what could happen if I had 30 minutes or 40 minutes? How many people can I impact through just the power of a message?
Sure.
So that's why as I started my company, and that's what I help people do today, is share their story from stage or on camera.
Awesome. That is so cool. So, how did you go from? So, did you start your company like in helping people like lose weight, or did you start the company as like, oh, okay, wow, I just realized that I went through this journey and I had this amazing experience and I shared my story. And so now I'm going to teach others how to share their story. Like, which direction did it go in?
Oh, I love that clarification. So I initially intended to help people with their health.
Okay.
And so I was sharing a 4-step process, the same process I followed on stage.
Mm-hmm.
And my intention was to get paid as a speaker. So I never, started my speaking company saying, oh, I just want to show up and tell my story on as many stages as possible. I intended to monetize it from the beginning. So that was how I was a little bit different in the beginning. And that meant I was searching for certain stages that were willing to pay someone to talk about their health story. So these stages were not like medical stages. I was not getting in front of doctors and nurses and telling about my
Right.
health story. That just was not going to work out. And those were not the people who were ready for that message. And certainly I had stages I went on where I was speaking in front of fitness owners, and they were not the right stage for me either. So I started off just saying, I have this story to share. I know that people do get paid to stand up on stage and share their message because that
Mm-hmm.
was always a part of my business model. How do I do that? And also through the power of the content I'm delivering from the stage, how do I encourage people to coach with me? Because at some point I had enough people asking me, how do I work with you? Then I'm like, oh, I should figure this out. Like, what would that look like?
Right.
And and I've always been a good listener. So I'm like, I have some of those coaching skills already.
Sure.
How can I develop this into a program where people can take this information and implement it? Because I feel the biggest disservice we can do as speakers is just to show up, share something beautiful and wonderful and thought provoking, and leave people with absolutely nothing to do with that information. I'm not saying you have to become a coach. Certainly, some
Mm-hmm.
of your listeners are not coaches here. That's
Right.
okay. But if you leave people in your audience nothing to do with this exciting idea that you just shared for 60 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
was it as effective and powerful as it could have been? Or do you need
Right.
to kind of take a look at what that message is and see if maybe you're delivering it to the wrong audience or on the wrong stage? Those are all possibilities.
Right. Absolutely. I agree with you. I mean, if you're going to, the whole purpose of speaking and sharing your message or sharing the education or whatever it is that you're sharing is to create transformation in the audience, right? If one or two or three people can walk away with a shift in their perspective or like motivation to go out and try the ideas that you've shared and actually make the changes in their life, that to me is the power of a good speaker.
Absolutely. And if people remember what you said, even better, because we
Hmm.
know that the first time we hear something is not always when we're ready to take action.
Right.
So repeat yourself is going to be really important as a speaker.
So let's address the elephant in the room. And that is that speaking, public speaking, is the number one fear of human beings. How do you like help your clients or people that you're speaking to that want to use public speaking kind of get over that initial hump or fear that they might have?
That's a really great question. And it's kind of funny you mentioned as the elephant in the room. My background image used to be an elephant, and I used to talk about the elephant in the room. So those are good memories for me. If you're nervous about going on stage or sharing your message, it probably means that's something you need to do more of. Because if you're nervous and scared, it's important to you. If
Hmm.
you stand up and you don't care what anyone has to say about what you're sharing, then it probably isn't important enough for you to talk about
Mm,
it. So
mm,
that's your first clue that that message is meant to be shared. In terms of how you address the fear,
hmm.
practice is always going to be helpful for you. The more you do it, the
Yep.
less intimidating it is, the less you stick in your mind and talk yourself out of it. I mean, how many times a day do we talk ourselves out of something that's really in our best interest,
Hmm.
but we're too lazy, we're too tired, we're too anxious, we're too overwhelmed? That
Right.
happens all the time. So if you have a game plan and a strategy in terms of, okay, I'm nervous about speaking in front of people, So I'm going to join my local group and I'm going to speak in front of people, or I'm going to practice this presentation that has to happen at work. And I'm going to make the most of this presentation. There are endless opportunities for us to share within our community, within our working situations, within all sorts of places you can share. But if you're nervous about it, then it's probably something that's there for you, and you're not going to be able to let it go and be like, no, it's not for me. Eventually, it's going to bother you so much that you have to share your message.
Right. I remember when I first started public speaking, and I took a lot of like public speaking courses by, I don't know if you know Patricia Fripp. Have you
Oh,
ever heard of?
everyone knows Patricia.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So I followed a lot of her stuff back then. And I don't know if this advice came from her, but somewhere along the line, I got the idea of practicing in front of a mirror.
Mm.
And that was one of the things that I used to do, is to practice my talk in front of a mirror so that you get comfortable in speaking out loud and you can see kind of like how you look, right? How you present to people. But I agree with you that practice is like the only way to get over it. And I like the idea of going to like I'm guessing your local Toastmasters, or are there any other types of groups that are available to people that they can go to practice?
Yes, there are plenty of other groups. Depending on what locality you're in, I'm happy to make specific suggestions. Certainly, you could go on places like Udly, which is an AI-powered public speaking tool that helps you create awareness around your speaking crutches, if you will. There are
Okay.
certain things we do verbally that represent crutches. You could certainly practice in your mirror, like you suggested, Lori. But one thing I'll say about practicing in front of a mirror is when you're speaking on a stage, for example, in front of a live audience, you don't see
Right.
yourself at all.
True.
So speaking in front of a mirror is an imperfect solution to practice. It's weird to stare at yourself because we don't do that in a conversation with someone. I call speaking on stage the same as a conversation. It's
Right.
kind of like an icebreaker conversation. Your signature speech is your icebreaker conversation. So practice your delivery of that, practice the words. You can even just use voice memos on your phone and record your audio version of you, or practice on podcasts such as this one, Clubhouse, if it's still, I think Clubhouse still exists. There are plenty of like
I don't even
audio
know.
only formats
Right.
that you could utilize to at least get through the words. Like, what am I going to say? A lot of people say, what do I going to say?
Right.
Well, practice the audio first, and then as you get more comfortable, then you can create awareness around what your visual presentation looks like, because your voice and your visual presentation are what make your delivery. So those are good ways to get started. In terms of specific areas near to you, Rotary Chambers of Commerce,
Right.
those places, Optimist clubs, those places are always looking for speakers, and it's people in your community. So it's a good way to get out and learn more about people in your community as well. Those are always free opportunities to speak.
Okay. So let's say the person has decided, okay, yes, I'm going to use public speaking. I'm going to overcome my fear. I want to get started in public speaking. Where do you how do you recommend a person get started with this?
Well, you have to start with something to talk about. So most
True.
of us, go from this misinformation. What can you talk about for 45 minutes with zero preparation? That's not it, friends. That's
Okay.
not what you focus on when it comes to
Okay.
your speech. Instead, you want to be strategic and intentional with your speech. So it's not what you could talk about all day, because we don't just listen to people to hear them talk. We listen to them to hear their purpose.
Okay.
And so it has to be something that creates purpose for people. And you know your market best from anyone. I work with coaches, counselors, and new authors. So they are people who already have a message that they want to share. Maybe it's tied to their book, it's tied to their program, it's tied to the work that they do in the world. So your signature speech would come from that, whatever that offering is for yourself. Now, if you're a person who doesn't have a business, but you're looking at an idea worth sharing, so a TED Talk worthy type idea, it's a good idea to take a look at what other TED Talkers are presenting on, not so you can copy them, but so you can create a better vehicle for that idea worth sharing. probably you haven't come up with anything totally original in the world. I'm sure somebody else has probably started talking about what you're talking about.
Right.
So
Right.
don't let that research discourage you. Allow it to encourage you to take the next step and provide your unique perspective on that topic area.
Okay. Do you recommend that a speaker only has like one signature talk that they do? Or do you recommend that there's three signature talks that you can do? Like, what's like, because, everyone gets caught up in like, oh, well, I need to, create a speaker kit. I need to create, my one sheet and all of those different things. And I need to know what topics I speak on. Like, where do you think that they should start?
Please only start with one signature speech. And here's why.
Okay.
If you have like a Chinese buffet of different presentations that you could deliver in the
Mm-hmm.
moment, and you have this beautiful marketing flyer, and here's all my laundry list of things that I could do for you, you will not become known for a single one of those things.
Mm.
Regardless of how well you can deliver it, regardless of whether you've delivered it before, it doesn't matter. People want to know that you have a box that you stand upon and that you have
Mm-hmm.
a particular perspective on a single topic. I'm talking to you, creative entrepreneurs. I know you don't like to commit to one thing. It's okay. We've all had to do it at one point, and
Right.
maybe you haven't found your thing yet. That's part of the work that I do with clients is how do you choose
Mm-hmm.
just one thing?
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard and it's totally worth your while because that's how you create a name for yourself within that topic area. And it makes it less complicated if you're doing your outreach so that you can speak consistently, that you always lead with the same topic. Now, I'm not saying the title has to remain the same. I'm not saying the stories you use to deliver that topic are the same.
Mm.
You
Okay.
can be creative in other ways when it comes to your presentation, but your topic should not be changing at all.
What if the person hiring you says, well, that's a great topic, but can you speak on X?
Now, that's an interesting conversation because sometimes that happens. Like if
Mm-hmm.
you're engaging with someone who's hosting an event, they might have a speaker already slated for the topic that you would talk about.
Mm-hmm.
This is where you dig deep and you recognize that, yes, you can create an off the cuff impromptu speech.
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to be worth your while? And here's what I
Right.
mean by that. You have to start with the end in mind. So if you're speaking at an organization and they're bringing you in, it's not the topic you usually speak upon.
Right.
You may not be as good speaking on that topic as your signature presentation, which means that you may not be as memorable. You may not deliver it as well. You're not as practiced. You don't
Mm-hmm.
know how it ties into your offers that currently exist. And
Right.
certainly you can create new offers if you want to,
Mm-hmm.
but you run the risk of diluting your message.
Mm. That
So
makes
I'm not saying
sense.
don't do it, but
Right.
do it with intention and purpose. If it
Right.
is an area you eventually want to go into, that's part of your mission and part of your
Mm-hmm.
mojo, go for it. Or if you want to test the waters and create something new, try
Mm-hmm.
to make it as advantageous for all of you as you can, so that you don't become known as that person who can just step up suddenly and create something out of nothing. You want to become known. You want your name to be associated with specific topics in your industry.
Okay. Now, when you were talking about like coming up with your core topic, you talked about like tying it into your offers, tying it into kind of like your mission and your vision. What about tying that topic into the audience's core problem that they struggle with?
Now, that's part of the work you do when you're doing your research about which topic to choose. So, when
Okay.
you're doing research around that, it's not just a today I feel like talking about this. There's a dedicated process you do to determine
Mm-hmm.
what the market will purchase because I tend
Mm-hmm.
to work with people who want to get paid to show up
Right.
on stages. In that
Mm-hmm.
case, the market, if there's no demand in that market, people are not going to ask you to do it.
Right.
So part of that process is saying, okay, here's what people are asking for around this topic. These are called the subtopics or the audience takeaways. You should have some sense of what that looks like for the industry you're going to market that presentation to. Now,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes if you're pivoting, you don't know what that particular market is looking for yet, but
Okay.
that's the part of the conversations pre-speaking that you have with the event organizer. So you can hear their language, you can hear their unique challenges. It
Mm-hmm.
might still be the same topic, but that's how you customize that program after engaging with the person who's hiring you to speak.
Got it. Okay. Okay, so I had a question in my mind. Now it's just like it's funny. Like I get so like honed into what you're saying. Okay, I know for me, one of the things that when I first started with my public speaking, I was so brand new and I started with like, okay, well, let me just create my own audience. Let me come up with my talk. And I started with guilt-free parenting because I spoke to moms and practically every mom feels guilty.
True story.
Yeah. And so I started with that talk. And I remember I booked a location like at a health club that was local to, where I lived and advertised it at this health club that I was going to be speaking on this. And literally 5 people showed up. I was like, okay, this is not going to work. I mean, I'm going to be like forever trying to find people to show up for my talks. And so I finally got a little bit smarter and said, okay, where is my audience of moms? Where are they already hanging out? And I found a group called MOPS, which is Mothers of Preschoolers. And I found that there's huge groups of them meeting at local churches all over the area. And so I started kind of advertising to those groups. What are some tips that you can share? Like, they've decided they want to be a speaker, they've figured out what their core topic is, they know who they want to speak to. How do you find like the places to speak?
Well, you call up Oprah or Tony Robbins and you say, I'm ready now. No, I'm just kidding.
I was going to say, wow, good luck with that one.
You got to figure out how to call them. But yeah, no. So usually when we think about finding speaking opportunities, right, we feel we dream big, and this is a good thing. We're like, we're going to be on the big stage. We're going to be, walk up music, lights everywhere, big televisions. It feels like it's going to be this, I'm going to be famous. I'm going to be a
Right.
celebrity. The reality, as you shared from your story, is you might have 5 people or 0 people, which I have had, show up for your speaking. It happens. So when it comes to finding speaking opportunities, I help people identify this through, again, a process. I'm a very process-oriented woman.
Okay.
But I walk people through the process in my master classes. Usually I run them quarterly. There might be one coming up soon, actually. So stay tuned and connect with me if you want to learn about that and what that looks like. But there's a process. There's certain markets that are always looking for speakers. And so I walk you through that process. I'll give you a template of how to start the preliminary research around how to do that. Now, you mentioned creating your own stage. I applaud you for that, Lori, because that is hard.
Yes.
That is a courageous thing to do, and it's not easy. I have done that model as well when I was a health coach, where I would connect with fitness studio owners and say, hey, can I talk about meal planning with your clients?
Right.
And 2 people, 3 people, 5
Right.
people, I realized very quickly that was not going to grow my business significantly.
Right.
And I still value those collaborations and the people in my network. So if you have a desire to create your own stage through your own events or your own masterclasses, which is what I do, have some consistent way that people can connect with you outside of other people's stages. Now, I build most of my business on other people's stages, podcasts, membership groups, associations. Those are my biggest markets right now. But you can certainly include a variety of different stage opportunities and mix and match them depending on whether they're short-term or long-term opportunities. So when you think about those big events, annual conferences, they come up but once a year.
Right.
So how are you going to fill your pipeline in between those? You fill it with other speaking opportunities, both free and fee speaking opportunities. So try things out. Long story short, try some things out. If you want me to walk you through the process of what's worked really well for me, join my next masterclass, or we can have a conversation and just say, okay, what does it look like for you? And one of the things I love about coaching is I don't tell people how to do it. I don't give you a template and say, this is what you need to do. You don't have to be like Jenn at all. You can certainly develop your own unique speaking journey. And that's the part that I love working on with clients is what does your unique speaking journey look like?
Right. Right. Now, what are the differences, I guess, between because we have, so many opportunities to speak online now. And, I will be honest, I'm disconnected from the in-person speaking arena. Like I have no idea what's going on in that space. Let's talk a little bit about kind of the differences between virtual speaking opportunities and more in-person on stage speaking opportunities.
Oh, this is a huge topic area. Where should we start with this, Lori?
Okay, maybe what we start with is kind of what are some of the advantages or like pros and cons of each of them?
Okay.
And kind of where do we stand these days? Where does the industry stand, the speaking industry stand in both of these arenas?
Yeah, that's a great question. So speaking industry standards and things like that, virtual versus in person. So I think pretty much any speaker you talk to will say, I prefer in person over virtual.
Okay.
For those of you who started your business online, you might be like, no, I prefer virtual because it's easier, it's more convenient, it's
Mm-hmm.
accessible for me, especially if you have family commitments. There's a good mix of both available to you. I would say
Okay.
about 80% of the speaking I do today is virtual. However,
Okay.
if you are a person who is willing to negotiate your travel, your expenses, and on top of your speaking fee, there are plenty of in person opportunities for you as well. Those opportunities are more competitive. And by that, I mean,
Mm.
there are two types of speakers that go to the big annual conferences. There's the
Mm-hmm.
keynote speakers versus the breakout session
Right.
speakers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can be successful at either model, but the
Mm-hmm.
keynote speakers are typically paid to show up, and the
Mm-hmm.
breakout speakers are typically not paid to show up.
Interesting.
So, for
Okay.
you, if you're a breakout speaker, you're going to need to get really crystal clear on how to sell through your presentation. Even if
Mm.
you're told specifically by the organizer, you cannot promote. There are
Mm.
ways you can seed your program that are
Sure.
not outright sales or promotion, but
Mm-hmm.
that invite people to take that next action step. So there's a different model. Certainly, you can do both if you'd like to, but the
Mm-hmm.
keynote speakers will get paid. And when we say pay, $4,000 to $10,000 if you're getting started. Breakout speakers may not get paid, but if you have a high ticket program that you're inviting people to, you might get, whatever the cost of that program would be from inviting people to take that next step with you. So that's a little bit about what that looks like. Now, virtually, typically you're not going to get paid for virtual speaking
Mm-hmm.
opportunities.
Right.
Usually they're collaborative partnerships or online summits where a bunch of you get together and pretty much promote to each other's email lists and marketing
Mm-hmm.
communities and things like that. That's a great model. Often it will be a pay to play model. So the benefit of that is for those people who have books, courses, or low ticket offers that they could use as an add-on or a bump up, and then you get paid in affiliate money. Now,
Mm.
typically those opportunities are only useful if you have a somewhat big platform. So if you've been in the game for a bit, you've got a low ticket offer that converts well, then
Mm-hmm.
you can be successful on a virtual online basis. Otherwise, the gold for you will probably be in membership groups. So whether it's nonprofit association markets, and saying, hey, I have this amazing expertise in this topic area. Will you
Mm-hmm.
bring me in? And then typically it's a recorded presentation
Sure.
that would then be posted to their platform. And typically you can promote.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you'll get paid to speak as well. So that's a little bit, did that give you the lay of the land a little bit?
Yeah, like yes. I know I'm in a membership group, for instance, for building our brands on LinkedIn. And they have guest speakers that come in, I think, once a month to speak to their group. The other Tuesdays are dedicated to member speaking presentations. I also know like a lot of my copywriter, she runs a blog membership and she does a lot of speaking like at summits, and
Yes.
her call to action is, well, she will either do a call to action into some free email templates that she has, and then she does an order bump into her membership, like maybe a free month in her membership. And she's gotten like over 300 members in her blog membership from just speaking at
That is
different summits.
awesome.
Yeah.
The model works, right? For those of you who are really good at doing that, the model can work for sure.
Yes. So let's, I guess, talk a little bit about what are the advantages for how to build our visibility as a brand using public speaking?
Well, the
So
biggest
why
advantage,
public speaking over I don't know, running ads or doing social media marketing or doing content marketing. Like why speaking?
Yeah, I love that you brought up some of those other examples of ways you can get visible because we hear about all of those, right? I
Hmm.
personally don't use Facebook ads. If you're a big fan of organic marketing or organic reach, then ads probably won't be a thing for you. Ads generally only pay off when you've tested your model and your funnels are good. So
Right.
that's not an approach that I personally have much knowledge on. So, public speaking, the reason why it's been important for me. So, back in 2020, pretty much the whole world shut down and
Right.
live events were canceled.
Hmm.
You may have heard why that was the case. Your life might have been upended personally and professionally. For me, I was fortunate that I already had relationships within the speaking world. I've been a professional speaker for a while,
Hmm.
that I still had plenty of virtual speaking engagements that were paid that allowed my business to run
Mm.
despite the shutdown of live events.
Hmm.
So for me, speaking has always been a consistent part of my income model in my business. If it's a
Right.
newer model to you, know that there's only so many coffee meetings you can do. There's only so many networking events you can attend. And if you're an
Right.
introvert like me, you may be like, oh, networking is for the birds. Like it's
I don't
so
like it.
painful.
Right. Uh-huh.
Oh, I've been in rooms with 100 people throwing business cards at each other, and that just
Yeah.
drains my energy faster than anything.
Me
But if I
too.
have 50 people, I get excited, I get energized. I get the energy from the audience. They're excited and energized. And in the same hour it takes to network versus doing public speaking, they know your mission. They know what you're there representing. They know
Hmm.
your style and how you show up. And they'll know just from being in the room with you or even virtual rooms with you whether you're a fit for them.
Right.
It's like a discovery call that never needed to happen, right? It's great when you can
Yes.
connect on discovery calls,
Like
but this
50
is like
discovery
you
calls.
testing it. Exactly. You get 50 discovery calls in 1 hour. I don't know any other way to leverage your time.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing with public speaking is people tend to, right or wrong, people tend to kind of elevate public speakers and put
Mm,
them on kind of a pedestal and view their authority as something that's good or big or whatever because they are on a public stage speaking. So they must know what they're talking about because they're speaking to all these people about it. So it's kind of like being a podcast host or a podcast guest. You have this certain level of authority, I think, because you are a presenter. Would you agree or disagree?
I totally agree. And you also have not just authority, but credibility because somebody has raised their hand and said, this person is someone I feel like you need to hear. So, especially if you don't have that social proof quite yet, if you
Mm-hmm.
don't have testimonials, if you don't have someone who's spoken on your behalf or done Google reviews for you, having someone put you on their stage is a mark of credibility. That person is
Mm,
saying, I know this person's message is valid and speaks to your what you're looking to do. So
right.
I'm going to put my hand up and vouch for this person. So not just
Right.
authority, but also credibility.
Trust. Yeah, trust. It's like I
Yes.
trust this person enough to put them on my stage, right?
Yes. And we've all
Yeah.
had those events, right? Where we're like, oh my God, this person is speaking at this event. I have to be in the room. Like
Mm-hmm.
there are certain people that just attract us. Like I know a speaker locally, her name is Kristen Brown, but like if she's on stage, I'm like, I'm going to show up at that event if it's a public event because I love her. I love
Okay.
everything she shares. I love everything she does. And you might be one of those speakers. Lori, when you open up your podcast, you might see listeners who keep coming back and keep telling you how amazing it is because they're showing up for you. And as
Sure.
humbling as that is, it's true. Like there are people who show up just for you.
Yeah, that's funny. I never look at it the way. I always look at it, they're showing up for my guests. Like
Oh,
that's how I look at it. Like I mean, I am just the host. I am just facilitating the conversation. And I always look at, well, how can I bring on more quality guests so that people will be interested in my podcast? But you're right. Some probably do listen to me. I don't view it that way. But I look at it like, hey, they're listening to Jenn. Jenn's got a lot of great information to share on public speaking, and I want to learn about public speaking.
Interesting. Lori, how many podcast hosts I've connected with over the years, and they all come at it from a very humble place. And it's a great thing to hear is people are here for the guests, but no, we are also here for the hosts as well, because you have this regular, consistent visibility show
Right.
that you're offering. And you bring something unique to this space as well. We're having a
Sure.
conversation, but you're also bringing your unique perspective. And that's the same thing as speakers do. It's just we're
Right.
in a two-way conversation.
Absolutely. That's true. Very true. So tell us how you work with clients. Like, what does it look like to work with you? I know that you have to coach people on public speaking. What does it look like, and what can they get out of a working relationship with you?
Yeah, I tend to have two different types of clients. There's the client who is maybe not as comfortable with public speaking and or has not been invited to many stages, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe the stages they've been invited to are colleagues or people in their network, and they're like, sure, I'll do that for my friend or my colleague. So these people don't have a signature speech at all. They're starting from scratch. They have a message, they have a business, they have services and programs that they offer, but
Mm-hmm.
they've never had to sell that program.
Okay.
It's just something that, they created a one-off presentation. So that's the first level of people that I help: coaches, consultants, authors, newly published authors. And
Mm-hmm.
the other side of it is a person who has already booked some speaking engagements, but they're like, I love speaking, I love
Mm-hmm.
creating the presentation, and nobody is booking phone calls with me after I'm done speaking. I want to learn how
Mm.
to leverage this model more efficiently and get better and
Okay.
booking more consistently into speaking engagements. So they have some idea of what they're doing. They have
Right.
a speech. They may even have a speech coming up in the next 2 to 3 months. So if that describes you, let's have a conversation, because we can knock out everything you need to know in just 2 to 3 months' time. I work one-to-one with people.
Okay.
And again, I can help you with everything from the creation and delivery of your speech to
Mm-hmm.
how to take that model and market yourself as a professional speaker. And when I say
Okay.
professional speaker, I mean you get paid to speak, whether it's on the front end or the back end, it doesn't matter. You are
Mm-hmm.
still professional if you're getting paid to show up for your expertise. So I can help you with any piece of that process, including the part that most people don't do, is helping you find the stages. Now, I don't
Right.
book you. I'm not a
Right.
bureau. I'm not an agent, but I can
Mm-hmm.
help you figure out how to DIY the process until
Okay.
you're ready to hire someone to do it for you.
Okay. Now, do you help or guide people on creating their marketing materials?
So marketing is a fun thing. You're always marketing yourself as a speaker or as a business owner. And yes, there are pieces of that that are specific to speaking, like your speaker sheet,
Mm-hmm.
your demo reel, or your sizzle reel might be another way you refer to that. I can help you with those pieces. Now, I am not a marketing expert. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's something that you do more, Lori, than I do.
True. True. Yes. Uh-huh.
However, as a speaker, you're always marketing yourself. So whether it's the words you use or the written materials or flyers that you're sharing with potential clients, I can help you with all of those pieces.
Okay. Good. So at least like the messaging, how to present, how to like position yourself. I would think.
Exactly.
Right.
And I do have access to different templates and resources that already exist that you can
Mm-hmm.
just leverage and use to put your messaging into.
Okay. So we have just a few more minutes. So I kind of like to always dive in, because this is an entrepreneurial podcast. And so there's a lot of entrepreneurs and founders that are listening. And I think we can all learn from each other about how we grow our businesses. What have been some of the challenges that you have faced in growing your speaking business?
So many challenges. But a lot of the things I've talked about during this podcast are mistakes that I made personally within my
Okay.
business. So I took a 9-month program to develop my signature speech. Most of us as business owners do not have that luxury of
Mm-hmm.
9 months of time to figure out what we're doing. I
Right.
had the time because I was in transition from my corporate job. So I took a
Okay.
long time to do that. Unfortunately, because I spent so much time on the front end of the speaking, like the speech itself, I
Mm-hmm.
was too content heavy, and I had
Mm.
no idea how to find speaking engagements. So I made the mistake where I pretty much, anyone who wants to hear me speak, I'll show
Mm.
up for you. That's a problem in the beginning
Yeah.
because I hadn't branded myself properly. I didn't know what I was doing. I was pretty much throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what is going to actually work here, because I had no
Right.
idea. And
Right.
there weren't a lot of mentors in my life who could help me walk through that process. So And the other mistake I've made is having the right message, so the right signature speech, but I brought
Mm-hmm.
it to the wrong stage. And you're going to
Ah.
experience this as you
Mm-hmm.
trial and error yourself through this process if you're not working with a coach like me. But a lot of the things I do, one of my first paid speaking opportunities was a warm referral from a speaking professional speaker in my network. She was a mentor of mine, and I reached out to her and said, "Hey, can you make an
Mm-hmm.
introduction for me? There's this event coming up." She
Mm-hmm.
was more than willing to do that. So don't be afraid to ask your people in your
Sure.
network for help. But unfortunately, I was talking about healthy living to a group of independent fitness owners. Oh my
Ah,
gosh. What a horrible mistake, right? I was like,
right.
these people know how to live healthy already. This is the wrong
Exactly.
audience.
Right. The
So
wrong
it might be the
audience.
wrong message. It might be the wrong audience. It might be that you have to stumble your way through what works and what doesn't work. But if pretty much any mistake that needed to happen, I probably made it.
Haven't we all? What's your favorite like success story that will inspire
Ooh.
people to say, "Oh gosh, yes, I totally want to do public speaking."
Yeah. So I mentioned earlier about the difference between short-term opportunities versus long-term opportunities, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a particular client I had been nurturing for, guess how many years I was nurturing this particular client?
5.
You were close. It's 4 years. 4 years,
4
Lori. I
years.
was nurturing this relationship. They finally said yes to me, and
Uh,
it almost missed my attention because it hit my spam box.
oh my gosh. Wow.
And I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is one of those things that I kept trying." There's one speaking opportunity I booked this year that came out, and I'm like, "This is my second year. I attempted to be a part of this huge event."
Mm-hmm.
So my encouragement to the listeners is you will hear a lot of no's. I hear
Mm,
no's all the time, and sometimes it hits you a certain way.
sure.
That's when you put them on your list to follow up with the following year, because one thing
Mm,
I know for sure, there
mm-hmm.
will never be a dearth of speakers, and there will never be a dearth of opportunities that are looking for speakers. So even if it's a no for
Mm-hmm.
this quarter, this month, this year,
Mm-hmm.
it's part of your follow-up opportunities to get a yes next time.
Oh, awesome. I love that. All right, we are on a mission Mojo podcast, and I always end with the same question, and that is, what is your mojo that you share with this world? Kind of
This is
that.
going to sound really cheesy, maybe.
That's
I share
okay.
myself with the world, which is not coming from a place of arrogance. It's coming from
Hmm.
a place of I didn't know anyone cared before. And
Okay.
so one of our biggest needs as humans is to be seen and heard.
Hmm.
And I've done a lot of work in therapy over the years, and I'm recognizing that growing up the youngest of 4 children, hiding myself in plain sight as a morbidly obese person who was growing
Mm,
up in a time when nobody was
hmm.
that, obesity was not a disease back then.
Sure.
I learned to be very quiet and to put
Hmm.
myself on mute.
Mm,
And so my gift is sharing myself with the world, not because there's anything unique about me, but because I also deserve to be seen and heard. If you're
hmm.
listening here and you're like, I have a message, you also deserve to be seen and heard. And you
Absolutely.
never know how that's going to pay it forward to the next generation and role model for your children, your community, your colleagues, your partners, their permission slip to be seen and heard.
I love that. I love that. So thank you so much, Jenn, for everything. You've just shared a wealth of information for everyone, and I just totally appreciate and feel blessed that you decided to be a guest.
I'm so grateful for you, Lori.
Okay. That's a wrap on today's episode. Thank you for tuning in to the On a Mission Mojo podcast. Ready to dive into more incredible stories of people on a mission? Next week, I'll return with a fresh episode to ignite your passion for creating a better world. If you loved what you heard, be sure to subscribe, leave a glowing review, and spread the word to all your friends. Head over to onamissionbrands.com for more great episodes. Remember, the world needs your mojo, so go out there and let your brilliance shine.